Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit unusual with you. I just got some information. I got this a little while ago, and so this is maybe old news if you are really tapped into everything that's going on in the fashion industry legislation world. But I got some documentation based on joining a couple of different groups that I was in when I was still in California. Governor Gavin Newsom decided to recently pass into law. And so because I have this information, I would like to share it with you. And so today, instead of kind of just riffing, and I very rarely actually use a script, and we don't really read a lot of things here. I just like to talk to you about a topic. What we're actually going to do today, what I'm going to do today, yes, the royal we, I keep getting in trouble for that for some reason. We are actually going to read to you the documentation that I've received, and I'm going to do my best to not make this very boring, but I want you to understand a couple of these laws that are going into place in California, because there is a chance that they will expand and grow and catch on in other locations. And so it's important for us to know, as leaders in this fashion industry, what's kind of going on and what might be coming up. So the two different policies that we are going to be talking through today are AB 347, which was a PFAS trailer bill, and SB 707, which was the Textile EPR bill. So PFAS stands for polyfluoroalkyl substances. They basically means the forever chemicals. So if you've ever heard of like Teflon, for example, being added to your cookware, these are the types of chemicals that don't break down. We use them in the fashion industry by making things waterproof usually. And there are different uses for different chemicals and all of that stuff. But the main use that we use them for is if you go to a store, an outdoor store, and you buy a waterproof jacket, there is a coating on the outside of the jacket that's either washed into the fabric or it's sprayed on in some way. And those chemicals allow the fabric to repel water, or if you've ever seen like a fabric or a jacket where the water beads up on the outside, it's basically because it has a Teflon spray coating on the outside. There have been a lot of different brands who have been known for putting these different chemicals out into the world. I will say that Gore-Tex is one of the brands that I have actually refused to work with for a lot of years because of the way that they use their chemicals and how toxic they have been in the past. But I will also say that the fashion industry and the materials industry and the fabric industry that we partner with has become really innovative with using less forever chemicals while still providing a lot of different options when it comes to water resistance and waterproofness. There were different levels of this chemical that we were using for a long time called C8. And over time, we were able to bring it down. So if you can imagine, that 8 came down to a 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we can actually provide different fabrics that have a coating with C0 on them. So Z0 being the lowest amount of actual toxic chemicals that we can put onto these goods that help repel water and help keep dirt off of things and help with all of those other kind of things that you would expect a waterproof outdoor jacket to do. This C0 has become a solution that a lot of different mills and a lot of different manufacturers are looking to. But we will also discuss today, and I should also let you know that there are a lot of different regulations specifically happening in Europe right now. Europe is like light years ahead of us here in the US on a lot of this, where they have been not allowing PFAS goods to be out in the market. And a couple of years ago, when this was announced, this sent the industry kind of spinning. I was in the outdoor industry at the time. I was just coming out of a brand who had spent a lot of time and effort putting out a lot of really high quality waterproof goods so that if you were out cycling in the rain, you didn't get soaked and you didn't get like all of that water onto your skin and onto your body. And all of those brands who were using anything that had to do with PFAS had to figure out how to pivot very, very quickly. And so if you had anything above C0 coating your fabrics at that time, you had to figure out how to resource your fabric. And if you know anything about resourcing your fabric in the apparel industry, you know that that means an entirely new development round usually. Changing your fabric usually means that you at least need to get in one new prototype to fit it and check it for quality. And so if you can imagine these big brands who had a lot of different products that included PFAS and them having to go back to the drawing board, resource fabrics, and kind of refit everything and recheck everything for quality because these regulations started to happen. It was a really big spin for the industry. A lot of people got really put out. A lot of people delivered product really late to the market because they had to go through all of this extra work. It became like a big push. I know I was being called by a lot of different people to just come in and project manage their PFAS transition. It was a huge deal at the time. And so a lot of people were really in the know about it and were able to make fast decisions and go. But there were some brands who definitely suffered because of these decisions. And so now we're starting to see this come over here in the US. There have been some bills in place, and this one, again, is a trailer bill, AB 347. So what I'd like to do today is literally just read through this document with you. And I'm going to try my best to kind of leave out acronyms and things like that that don't make any sense. If there's like some legal jargon in here that doesn't make sense, I will try to read over it. I'm going to do my best to make sense of this for you. But I want you to have this information so that if you're out there working for a brand or if you're a brand owner yourself, you know what's going on over there in California, because again, they are very good about leading the way in a lot of different environmental stances, and it could start to trickle out to the rest of the country as we continue to see some of this take place. So this comes from the California Outdoor Recreation Partnership, which is a group that I was invited to sit in on a couple different times while I was still living in California. You can go to their website at californiaoutdoor.org. They are a wonderful and very inclusive organization. And so this is just the letter that I received. Hi, Court Policy Committee, Board of Directors, and colleagues. Governor Newsom signed both AB 347, the PFAS trailer bill, and SB 707, the textile EPR bill, and EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility, into law over the weekend. In general, California bills become law on January 1st of the following year, unless specifically clarified otherwise. Now, they are planning to host a webinar, which I have not received additional information on. So if you're interested in maybe hearing a little bit more about this, you can reach out to me. You can go to unmarkedstreet.com on our contact page. You can reach out to me there. You can also put a comment below this video, or you can reach out to us at hello@unmarkedstreet.com, and we will get your message if you're interested in hearing more information of how you can maybe attend some of these webinars. For AB 347, this bill is a follow-up to AB 1817, which was called the PFAS ban in textiles. It was granted that the amendment and the phase out of PFAS will now be overseen by the Department of Toxic Substances Controls, which is abbreviated DTSC. We hope this will minimize private litigation, although it will not fully prevent it when we run into issues with this new law. So highlights of AB 347 that they listed out for us here. It requires the Department of Toxic Substances Control on or before January 1st, 2029 to adopt regulations for the enforcement of those prohibitions on the use of PFAS. It requires the Department of Toxic Substances Control on and after July 1st, 2030 to enforce and ensure compliance with provisions and regulations. It requires manufacturers of these products on or before July 1st, 2029 to register with the DTSC, to pay a registration fee to the department, and to provide a statement of compliance, certifying compliance with the applicable prohibitions on the use of PFAS to the department. It authorizes the DTSC to test products and to rely on third-party testing to determine compliance with prohibitions on the use of PFAS. It requires the DTSC to issue a notice of violation for a product in violation of these prohibitions on the use of PFAS. It authorizes the DTSC to assess an administrative penalty for a violation of these prohibitions and would authorize the department to seek an injunction to restrain a person or entity from violating the prohibitions. And last but not least, it requires the DTSC on or before July 1st, 2033 to submit a report to the legislature regarding its compliance and enforcement activities performed pursuant to these provisions. So basically, if you are not compliant by these dates in the state of California, you cannot sell goods that have PFAS in them at these times. Your product will basically be taken down off of websites. You could be facing fines or any other kind of regulation that they decide that they're going to imply on people who do not follow these revisions. So if you are working at a company and you know that you're still using PFAS, and maybe it's because you don't sell goods in Europe and so you haven't had to worry about it quite yet, know that this is going to become a big issue for you and that you are going to have to figure out how to resource things, and starting to do that now is going to be really smart. There are resources out there for you when you talk to your mills and you talk to any sourcing or supplier that you have out in the industry. Make sure that you are asking for everything without PFAS in it so that you can start sourcing the right materials and the right goods for yourself now. Okay, moving on to SB 707. The highlights of SB 707. It enacts a stewardship program known as the Responsible Textile Recovery Act of 2024, which will require a producer of apparel or textile articles to form and join a producer responsibility organization, or PRO. So producer responsibility organization is going to be called a PRO or a PRO. It requires CalRecycle to adopt regulations to implement the program no earlier than July 1st, 2028. Upon approval of a plan or commencing July 1st, 2030, whichever is earlier, the bill will make a producer subject to specified civil penalties unless the producer is a participant of a PRO and all apparel and textiles are accounted for in the plan. Now, the organization that helped keep a lot of us included in this really worked with Governor Newsom and his office on a lot of the language in here. So I'm going to read through some of this, but bear with me a little bit. A lot of it is redacted based on the way that they sent this documentation to us. They sent essentially the original documentation and the way that everything was worded in the bill in the first place. They've redacted and crossed out the wording that they were able to get fixed and then put in new verbiage the way that they wanted it to be. So bear with me a little bit here. I'm going to see if I can read this to you as best as possible. Okay. So the chemical management plan as part of SB 707. The needs assessment shall include an evaluation of the factors contributing to the presence of perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, the actions and investments needed to avoid contaminations related to recycling. This shall include available environmental and public health data and an evaluation of the available end markets for recycled material that cannot be remanufactured into textiles or textile articles in California. So basically, they are going to assess whether or not anything has PFAS, which we just learned is not allowed to. So hopefully there won't be very many of these that they have to assess. But what they're going to be doing is making sure that they evaluate all of the textiles that are going to be going into this recycling program to make sure that they don't have PFAS in them. A description of how the PRO addressed the presence of PFAS and other chemicals regulated under a certain amount of chapters in the codes that we're changing here, including but not limited to the actions taken and investments made to avoid contamination in the recycling process, and the availability of end markets for recycled material that could not be remanufactured into textiles or textile articles in California. So when it goes into the recycling process, essentially what they're looking for is not just, can we clearly see that there's PFAS on here, but we also need to be receiving a description of how they address the presence of PFAS so that when these things go into a recycling process, we're not essentially mixing things up and adding PFAS to something that might not have already had it on it. So mixing all of these different fabrics together and making sure that none of them get contaminated with PFAS. The next point here is existing repair and reuse programs for eco-modulated fee structure. The pro shall consider existing producer collection, repair, reuse, and recycling programs in developing the eco-modulated fee structure. If a company already has a program in place that is helping its customers either repair, collect, reuse, or recycle the goods that it's selling to them, that will be built into their fee structure. So they might maybe get like a discount if they already have something in place. The online marketplace enforcement section. Now, this one's a little bit difficult again, so bear with me. A retailer, importer, distributor, or online marketplace may sell, offer for sale, import, or distribute a covered product if, on the date the retailer or distributor sells or offers for sale the covered product in or into the state, the producer, brand, or covered product was listed as compliant on the department's internet website. Within 12 months of the effective date of regulations pursuant to a section, and on or before July 1st of each year thereafter, the department shall post on its internet website a list of producers that are in compliance with this chapter. The department shall list, as appropriate, the reported brands of colored products for each producer. So within 12 months of each effective date, so once this goes into effect, you're going to be able to go onto this website and find out which goods and which brands are actually in compliance with this. A producer that is not listed on the department's internet website pursuant to these subdivisions that demonstrates compliance with the chapter before the next list is posted may either be added to the internet website or be provided a certification letter from the department stating that the producer of a covered product is in compliance. The department's list of compliant entities shall be available on the department's internet website in a machine-readable format. So if you missed the deadline to be compliant for the list that's going up, this July coming up, you can still receive your certification and be listed in a different way. It might not be on the main website, but you will still be compliant and you will not be getting in trouble as long as you kind of are still working toward the right things and you are getting your certifications. A retail, importer, distributor, or online marketplace shall monitor the department's internet website where compliant producers are posted to determine if a producer, brand, or covered product is in compliance with this chapter for that producer of covered products. So it's up to us to be kind of regulating each other, right? We need to be monitoring this website. We need to be making sure that if we're going to a new mill, that we go check the website and make sure that they're on it and that they're actually in compliance of this. On and after the date a plan is approved by the department, a retail, importer, distributor, or online marketplace shall not sell, distribute, offer for sale, or import a covered product in or into the state for sale in the state unless the producer of the covered product is listed as in compliance pursuant to this section for that brand and covered product. So there will be a point, of course, where California is not going to be selling goods unless you're in compliance of SB 707. Those are some of the main things that are happening. Now, what's essentially going on here is going to be covered. I know that a lot of this didn't make a ton of sense because there was a lot of different jargon in there. And I'm going to get to that right now because we actually also received the press release from Governor Newsom's office, which kind of breaks it down in a little bit more layman's terms. So I'm going to read that to you as well here. Senator Josh Newman, who was a big advocate for this, is proud to announce that Senate Bill 707, the Responsible Textile Recovery Act of 2024, has been signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom. This groundbreaking legislation establishes the country's first extended producer responsibility textile recycling program, making a significant step in the state's efforts to combat waste and promote sustainability. Under its provisions, 707 creates a framework for producers and other participants in the value chain to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products and textiles, including repair, recycling, and reuse of garments and fibers. Once implemented, SB 707 will not only reduce the amount of textiles sent to landfills, but will also support the development of upcycling and recycling across California and help address the environmental impacts of fast fashion and the throwaway culture it has embedded. Governor Newsom said, "I am very proud to see 707 sign into law. It will have a major positive impact on California's environment and communities. SB 707 isn't just about recycling, it's about transforming the way we think about textile waste. The framework created by SB 707 will create new opportunities for every Californian to participate in a more sustainable future. By 2030, convenient drop-off locations for used textiles across the state will provide everyone with a free and simple way to be part of the solution. California is again at the forefront of innovation, providing that we can lead the way in creating a circular and sustainable textile economy that benefits everyone. End quote. The fashion industry has been identified as a top industrial polluter, accounting for approximately 10% of global carbon emissions. As textiles decompose in landfills, they emit methane gas and leach dyes and chemicals into the soil and groundwater, further contributing to environmental decay. The rise of fast fashion, or the marketing and sale of low-cost, low-quality garments that fall out of vogue with increasing speed, is a major contributor to these devastating trends. In 2021, approximately 1.2 million tons of textiles were disposed of in California. Despite 95% of textiles being reusable or recyclable, only 15% are currently recycled or reused. Since its introduction last year, SB 707 has been subject to extensive stakeholder engagement. This collaborative process has resulted in dozens of improvements as a result of hundreds of hours of stakeholder meetings with a diverse coalition, including environmental organization, industry leaders, and community groups. Over the course of the legislative process, the bill has received widespread support, a testament to its importance and potential impact. This support includes the California Product Stewardship Council, IKEA, Goodwill, Sierra Club California, Everlane, Reformation, Board Riders, Republic Services, as well as numerous local governments, agencies, and sanitation districts. I also personally know that Cal Recycle was very, very involved in all of this. And I now am going to give you just a little bit of background that I know kind of in my own terms and in my own language here. So the idea here is that by 2030, if you have goods that you don't want in your house anymore, maybe you don't want to wear a garment anymore, instead of just having the option to take it to a Goodwill or take it to a thrift store or to donate it, there will now also be an option for you to take it to a recycling center in California. And I will say the issue that I most see with this, as someone who's been in the industry for a really long time and knows how things are designed and made, I see some issues with the fact that a lot of brands like to put a lot of different textiles, textures, materials, and trims into a single garment. So for example, in the cycling industry, we see a lot of different brands think that it's the right thing to do, or it's the trendy thing to do, to use 5 different fabrics in a single jersey. So we've got a mesh that's made of polyester. We've maybe got a polyelastane front and back. There's so many different combinations of fabrics. And then we add a bunch of different trims to it, and we add a bunch of different materials in the way of like heat transfers and zippers and elastane, and we add bonding tape, and we add woven labels that may be cotton on top of this polyester. And my concern personally is that this is going to become an ever increasing challenge to figure out how to properly recycle these goods. Now, that's not to say there aren't things in works. I've actually been to a number of mills who are able to figure out how to destroy goods that go into a recycling program. They basically chop them all up into itty bitty little fibers. Everything becomes really condensed then, and everything becomes pressed, and they're able to extrude new fibers from that, or they're able to make new materials out of it. So for example, if we were to take all of these different fibers and materials and we were able to chop it up, in a machine that made everything really, really tiny, and we made everything really, really fibrous, and then we smushed all of those fibers together so hard that it actually created a brick. I have actually seen where some people are able to then take those bricks and create different materials out of them so that we could build different kinds of infrastructure, or we could use them as temporary walls in our offices. There are a lot of different conversations being had. I mean, one of my very best friends and her husband work as an architecture firm. And we were even talking the other day, like, is there a way to somehow make genuine building bricks for a house, or building materials or insulation for a house out of this kind of material waste that we have in the apparel industry? There's a lot, I think, that's there to explore. But one thing that I want you to start thinking about as someone who's out there in this industry, or someone who is a leader, or someone who is a brand owner, is whether or not it's still the right thing to do to have so many different textures and materials and trims and fabric types in a single garment, if you can get the same level of quality and fit by reducing the amount of items that you're using. So let's say that same cycling jersey just used one single fabric, and it just had one zipper on it, and the items that were put on it as trims or as labels or as branding were screen printed using water-based screen prints instead. Like, I think there are different ways for us to think about designing our goods so that they become easier to recycle and easier to put into legislative acts like this, so that when we get to the recycling part of it and the reuse part of it, it doesn't become so hard for each of these different governments to figure out how to move forward or how to make that actually work. And I could be completely wrong here. Like, maybe there are already a lot of different things that people are using. There are many different ways maybe where people are figuring out how to actually recycle those goods and get them to do what you need them to do. But the research that I've done, unfortunately, when we say that we're going to be sending in garments for recycling, what ends up happening is those goods get bundled up, packaged up, and sent over in pallets to different countries for them to deal with. And we're calling that recycling. And I just really hope that we can come up with better ways to move this needle forward on sustainability here in the US, and that we can find way more innovative ways to use this waste that we're creating on a constant basis here in our industry. There is so much work for us to do here in the fashion industry. I am here to be a part of it. I am here to try to make you a part of it. One of my biggest missions, I've been talking about this a lot because I feel like I've finally found a way to articulate it. One of my biggest missions is to help make you and all of us the kinds of millionaires who are going to use our influence and our capital to make positive impact in the world. And so if I can help you learn something, or I can help you do something, or I can come into your company and take work off of your plate so that you can focus on becoming a millionaire brand, you can focus on becoming a millionaire yourself, then we can all create the kind of community who wants to then use that capital to make positive impact on what our industry is doing. And these kind of bills are exactly where we should all be focusing our efforts, making sure that these don't just go into effect in California, but that we can make sense of them and make sense of them in other places, and that we can continue to roll out more initiatives like this. I know I've been looking at some different petitions to sign, and I will continue sharing with you the knowledge that I have. I hope that this was a little bit helpful to you. I know that this was a lot of jargon, and me reading this may have been a little bit tough, but I literally wanted to pass on the exact information that I had to you so that I could share it with you. And if you have any questions on it, you know where you can find me. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode at all, if this was helpful to you, if you thought that this was a good learning, please leave us a review. It means the world to us that you are out there listening and that you are leaving us some very great reviews. I always love hearing that people are listening to the podcast and that it's helping them in any way. So in the meantime, have a great week ahead, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.